Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janna Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Janna Vallabha Girivardhari Jasoda Nandana Braja Janaranjana Jasoda Nandana Braja Janaranjana Jamunatira Bhunnachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janna Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Janna Vallabha Girivardhari Girivardhari Jasoda Nandana Braja Janaranjana Jasoda Nandana Braja Janaranjana Jamunatira Vanachari Jamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Sri Radha Madhava ki jai, Sri Radha Giridhari ki jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Shodhara Sri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Shodhara Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Saranta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada ki jai. Atakoti Vaiṣṇava Vrinda ki jai. Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Samveda Bhakti ki jai, Go Premanandi, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories, assembled devotees, all glories, assembled devotees, all glories, all glories. Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Okay, that's interesting. Hare Krishna. So this morning, reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, 8th Canto, Chapter 19, Lord Vamanadev begs charity from Bali Mahārāja, and this is text 33. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay. Trivi Kramair Imal Lokan Vishvakaya Kramishyati Sarvasvam Vaiṣṇave Dattva Mudha Vartishyase Katam Trivi Kramarima Loka Vishvakaya Kramishyati Sarvasvan Vaiṣṇave Tattva Mudha Vartishyase Katam Trivi Kramarima Loka Vishvakaya Kramishyati Sarvasvam Vaiṣṇave Dattva Mudha Vartishyase Katam Trivi Kramarima Loka Vishvakaya Kramishyati Sarvasvan Vaiṣṇave Dattva Mudha Vartishyase Katam. Anyone else? Online? Okay. Tribi. 3. Kramai. By steps. Iman. All these. Lokan. 3 planetary systems. Vishvakaya. Becoming the universal form. Kramishyati. Gradually he will expand. Sarvasvam, everything. Vaiṣṇave, unto Lord Vishnu. Dattva, after giving charity. Mudha, O you rascal. Vartishyase, you will execute your means of livelihood. Katam, how? You have promised to give him 3 steps of land in charity, but when you give it, he will occupy the 3 worlds. You are a rascal. You do not know what a great mistake you have made. After giving everything to Lord Vishnu, you will have no means of livelihood. How then shall you live? Purport. Bali Mahārāja might argue that he had promised only 3 steps of land. But Śukrācārya, being a very learned Brahmana, immediately understood that this was a plan of Hari, who had falsely appeared there as a brahmachari. The words Mudha Vartishyase Katam reveal that Śukrācārya was a Brahmana of the priestly class. Such priestly Brahmanas are mostly interested in receiving remuneration from their disciples. Therefore, when Śukrācārya saw that Bali Mahārāja had risked all of his possessions, he understood that this would cause havoc not only to the king, but also to the family of Śukrācārya, who was dependent on Mahārāja Bali's mercy. This is the difference between a Vaiṣṇava and a Smarta Brahmana. A Smarta Brahmana is always interested in material profit, whereas a Vaiṣṇava is interested only in satisfying the Supreme Personality of Godhead. From the statement of Śukrācārya, it appears that he was in all respects a smarta brahmana interested only in personal gain. Om Agyandimarandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshuranminitam Dena Taismai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Sthapitam Dena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Svapadandikam Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaur Bhakti Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vanchakapatarubhascha kripa sindhubheva cha patitanam bhavanebhyo Vaiṣṇavebhyo namo namaha. So by your wishes and prayers, I'll try to say a few things. One thing is, someone who has the books on their phone, or I need you to look up 1st Canto, 2nd chapter, verse 9. I meant to reference it earlier, but I'll be speaking from that. So, it's very unpleasant to get in an argument with your wife or your guru, isn't it? You know why? You never win. You're always wrong. It's true. Most of the time you are wrong, so even if you're right, you're wrong, so you're wrong. So it's interesting, isn't it? So here he is. He's in an argument. He's in a difficult situation with his spiritual master. He thought he was doing the right thing. A Brahmin boy came and asked for 3 steps of land, and he said, okay. He even tried to talk him into taking some more. He said, come on, I'm Bali Mahārāja. I'm running the whole universe right now. You could ask for quite a lot more than 3 steps of land. And he said, you're foolish. Bali Mahārāja said, you're not a very sophisticated little Brahmin boy. I mean, you could ask for all kinds of things, and you're asking me for 3 steps of land? And of course he said, well, if you're not satisfied with 3 steps of land, what are you going to be satisfied with? So a nice Brahminical answer. So he's saying, okay, I'm just going to give him 3 steps of land. So in this way he's completely bewildered. But Śukrācārya could see through what was going on. And it's interesting, he saw but he didn't see. He's saying, this is Lord Vishnu. Wait a second, if it's Lord Vishnu, shouldn't you just surrender to him? Right? But he's saying, this is Lord Vishnu trying to trick us, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who owns everything anyways. So it's quite interesting. He saw but he didn't see. Brought that up in the class last week. So, he's exposing himself as being a smarta brahmana of the priestly class, and quite unlike the Vaishnavas, they utilize their position for 2 things. One is, of course, their personal livelihood, and they encourage the disciples how to enjoy in this material world. That's what their encouragement is. So, let's see here. I guess we can just jump into a few verses here. The first one is from the Mundaka Upanishad. Prabhupada quotes it quite often. This Tad Bigarnatam Sagurun Eva Bigachet. And that's a strong instruction that one has to find a bona fide spiritual master to make the human form of life successful. That's the Vedic view of life in this material world. Samitpani is in a Samitpani, Shrotaram Brahmanishtam. Samitpani means carrying wood in your hands, which means you should approach the spiritual master in a very humble mood of service, because in previous days, even today, someone's got to get the wood, right, for the yagyas. Someone's got to bring you the wood. So to go out and collect the wood very humbly and bring it back to the group for the daily Agnihotra, it's a sign of humility. We even have the pastime there of Sudam Brahman and Krishna going out in the woods, and the storm came, and so they're out collecting wood. And it's not such an easy thing, and it can be dangerous at times, right? Are the woods and jungles in India a safe place to be? No, Did you ever get in trouble in the jungle? Run across cobras there in Mayapur when you were a little kid? Yeah. So he used to go out, collect wood for his guru, like that, and in the jungles of Mayapur. It's not an easy thing. And you think about it also, if you're living in the same village, and everyone's collecting wood for years on end, you got to keep going further and further and further, because all the wood's gone. Because all the Brahmins, it's quite, so it's an austerity. So one's very humble, one collects samit pani, and then this here's what the point is, it says here the qualification, Shrotriyam Brahma Nishtam. Now Shrotriyam, doesn't that mean one who's well-versed in the Vedas, in transcendental knowledge? And Brahma Nishtam means one who's fixed. He's fixed on the Brahman platform or the transcendental platform. That's the kind of guru you need to find. That's not Śukrācārya. And unfortunately, he was using his position. And the thing is also, not everyone's looking for a guru who's going to lead them back home, back to Godhead, right? Many people, I would say probably the majority of people, looking for a religious or spiritual authority that will teach them how to be happy in this world, right? Teach them how to be happy. But that's not. Then I'll have you quote this verse from the Bhagavatam. But and that's kind of interesting. How do you land up with a spiritual master like Śukrācārya? Because Bali Mahārāja wasn't looking to be on the path of self-realization, was he? He was trying to figure out how to take over the universe. Now that's a pretty big material desire. I mean, how big of a desire do you have, Ananda Vrindavan? What do you want to take over? The room at the end of the hall? You want the room at the end of the hall upstairs? Maybe they can give you a private room up in the ashram. You know, how big of a desire do we have? He had desired the whole universe. You're not even a room or a house or a city or state or country or planet. He wanted the whole universe. So, and he wanted a guru who could help him do that. And then Śukrācārya and his sons and so on, they performed all those different sacrifices and so on to make him very, very powerful in the armor and to take over. And also, we were reading earlier how they were performing all these different ceremonies to keep him in that position, understanding that everything in the material world is temporary. So the Brahmins would perform all these different karma kanda rituals and so on to satisfy the devatas and so on, to try to keep that position and opulence. So that's Śukrācārya. And so on one hand, he was being very, it was appropriate, the relationship between the two of them. And Śukrācārya was enjoying, can you imagine being sponsored by someone who's ruling the universe? There's probably a good paycheck in there, if you think about it, right? You know, people look for a wealthy person to, what is that called? Sponsor, what do they call that? It's like the Medici family in Italy. They took care of what do they call it? They took care of the artists and so on. I don't think the word was sponsored. What was the word? You know. But if you were an artist in those days, you had to have a wealthy family or the king take care of you. You know, you didn't have they had to. And then you did all what you did. You painted the Sistine Chapel and this, that, and all kinds of different things. But these very, very wealthy families, I forget what the word is I'm trying to think of, it's like sponsored. So Śukrācārya, he was sponsored by Bali Mahārāja, who was the king of the universe. So when he could see the end of his tenure coming, he was thinking, oh my God, I'm going to lose my job. It's all going to be gone. He's not going to have anything. Krishna's going to take everything away, and I'm not going to get anything. Probably didn't have a retirement plan, 401k or anything like that. So he was thinking, I'm out on the street. So it's a good match. A materialistic disciple and a materialistic guru, they get along just fine. But when it comes, for about self-realization, then things start changing. That's what happened here. Bali Mahārāja, Lord Vishnu is coming, and things are going to change, big time. They're going to change. So Śukrācārya is very, very upset. He's not appreciating that, oh, my disciple is now taking a big step, if I don't mind me using that term in this story, taking a big step to going back home, back to Godhead. Lord Vishnu is personally come and asking charity, and he's probably going to bless him, and everything's going to change. How wonderful. This is absolutely wonderful. When the guru sees the disciple advancing in spiritual life, oh, so happy. When the parents see the children becoming very successful, oh, so happy. When Śukrācārya is he's envious, he's very upset, because he thinks, what's going to happen here? I'm out. So he's only calculating. So that's the problem, is when the teacher or guru starts calculating, how can my dependent make me happy, then it's a very unfortunate and materialistic arrangement. And even any relationship in the material world, if we're thinking this other person is for making me happy, we got a problem. We got a big problem. That's not a very good basis for a long, happy, satisfying relationship on any level. So especially guru and disciple. So like Prabhupada said, I don't know exactly where the expression comes from, but Prabhupada said to keep a guru like you keep a dog. Is that a popular saying in India, or where does that come from? They keep a guru like they keep a dog. Maybe it's something Prabhupada was just referring to in the 60s and so on. People, oh, I have so-and-so as my guru, so-and-so is my guru. It's like you have a dog. You see people walking with their dogs, and the dogs meet each other, and they, oh, what kind of dog is that? Oh, it's an Australian Shepherd. Oh, this is a Pekingese. Oh, very nice. Like just a pet that you parade around, So that's not the spiritual master. That's not what the spiritual master is. So to use that position is actually it's a sin. Like that. So why don't you read that verse out loud? You can read just the translation if you like, because of the time. This is from the Bhagavatam, Narada Muni. You need a microphone for this.
This is verse 1.2.9 in Srimad Bhagavatam. Translation: all occupational engagements are certainly meant for ultimate liberation. They should never be performed for material gain. Furthermore, according to sages, one who is engaged in the ultimate occupational service should never use material gain to cultivate sense gratification.
Okay, so there's an important instruction that one who's on the spiritual path, taking that position, and in any of the positions, one should be very, very careful not to utilize one's position for sense gratification. One should utilize one's position only for advancing in devotional service. Now, Prabhupada's saying here, the difference between a Vaiṣṇava and a Smarta Brahmana is that the Vaiṣṇava is interested only in satisfying the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whereas the materialistic Smarta Brahmana is interested in satisfying himself. Like that. So that's the big, big difference. We can contrast this to, Chanaka Pandit. There's a story about Chanaka Pandit, the Brahmin that Mahārāja Chandragupta, that was his name, right? Under his guidance, he amalgamated a huge kingdom in India and drove out, was it Alexander the Great? Who did he drive out? I think it was Alexander, right? And for some time, and it's interesting that he never accepted any remuneration. And he lived in a little hut outside the palace. It's not like I'm the big guru here. I got the West Wing and all of these kinds of things. So he's a very, very simple life. And he could not be bought by Chandragupta. Because the whole thing is, as soon as you start taking money from someone, you're obligated, right? Just like we read in the Mahabharata, we read Dronacārya, Bhishmadev, they were being maintained by Duryodhana. They're eating his food and so on, and that says why they felt obliged and contaminated, their consciousness was contaminated, obliged to fight on his side. And you're working for someone, you can't, if you're working for someone being paid for them and you go against them, you're fired. You can't do that. And just like in universities, they have this thing with, tenure and so on, professors and so on. Because they're being paid by the university, they have to be very careful what they say. You can actually lose your job if you say the wrong things in your classroom. Specifically, nowadays, about theistic ideas. You know that? You can actually lose your job if you start being a little too religious in the classroom. You can be as atheistic as you want. You can decry the existence of God up and down, left and right, and that's fantastic. That's wonderful in our modern day. But you start being a little too gaudy, or whatever you want to call it, a little too religious. I'm sorry, you're out of here. And they can do that because you're paid. So if you want to stay there, you got to be careful what you say. It's quite interesting. Even just like Sariputta brings that up, and the whole thing with the theory of evolution and so on. If you don't toe the line, you're out. So, what your private thoughts are, you can't bring them into this classroom or into your books and lectures and so on, because you're being paid. So, Chanaka Pandit, he didn't accept any salary, and as long as the king was just listening to him, taking his advice, things were going well. And it said that one time the king challenged him. So he just left. He left that position, just walked away. He wasn't obliged like that. And that's the greatness of the Brahminical culture, is even though they are advisors to the kings who absolutely need that advice, they keep themselves. That's why the vow of poverty is there. They're keeping very, very simple, and they can't be bought. And then their instructions are some value. They're not tainted. They don't feel that they're obliged to say something just to make the king happy like that. No, I'll just tell you the truth. If you want it, I'll tell you the truth. So that's a little story about Chanaka Pandit. And I brought this up a few other classes. I had read the article about the Pope that passed away some time ago, St. Francis. There's an article about asking the question, do you know how much the Pope is paid, that position? Just like our president, I think it's $300-something thousand a year. Do you know how much they pay the Pope every year? Yes, zero. There's no salary whatsoever. Whatever he gets, he gives to different Catholic charities and so on. And when Pope Francis passed away, all his worldly belongings fit into a shoebox, and they gave it to his family. That was it. Suresh, can you fit all of your worldly belongings into a shoebox? Big shoebox, size 12 maybe, like that. So it's quite interesting. I mean, he had so much facility, but what he considered my own, and even that, a spiritual person doesn't consider anything their own, fit into a shoebox. So that's a sign of a real spiritual person and so on. So, time. Okay, I'll jump to this. One of the things I wanted to bring up, because we're talking about gurus, good gurus, bad gurus. Of course, Prabhupada said there's no such thing as a bad guru. If you're off mark, you're not a guru, you're a garu, which means a cow, right? Like that. So, and in the Leelas of Krishna, there's one particular demon. Actually, she was the first demon to attack Vrindavan, and she represents the bogus guru, right? Who is that? Who was that demon? Putana. And I'll just read a little. These are a few notes. This is from the course given at in Vrindavan years ago. But I just want to read a few points, and then a few points of what Srila Bhakti Siddhanta says about this. So you get an idea what it means, what's a materialistic guru that Putana represents, or the pseudo-guru. And it says it may appear in two different forms, that personality: a deceitful so-called guru who preaches sense gratification, or liberation, or both. That's interesting, even liberation. In some cases, this may be a person who is engaged in some Krishna-conscious activity but has not realized the course of pure devotional service and tries to give instructions to his disciples beyond his own understanding or without regard for their situations. So in other words, you can mess up someone's spiritual life, so you have to be careful. to the inwardly manifest spiritual guide in the form of mundane empiric reasoning, the reasoning faculty, the materialistic mind, is also like putana. In other words, we start speculating. Our mind, our guide, and we've been following our mind for a long time, like since time immemorial, right? As soon as the jiva comes into the material world, you have a materialistic mind, and the mind is always making so many suggestions. Has your mind suggested anything to you today since you woke up? How many thoughts do we have a day? Well, the average person is, what, 39,000 thoughts a day or something like that? Right, so that's a lot of suggestions. That's like endless. Like the mind never stops, does it? It just never stops. Hey, what? So and we think, oh, you know, I got my own spiritual path, right? That's the SBNRs. You know what SBNRs are? Spiritual but not religious people. They're called an SBNR. And, oh, I've got my own idea. I don't like organized religions and this and that. I'm just spiritual, and I've got my own ideas, and I'll do this and I'll do that. And that's the putana in our own self. I mean, can we really trust our mind to lead us back home, back to Godhead, out of this material world? I don't think so. So anyways, there's a whole story of putana, which we won't read. At the very end here, gave the class. This was taken from an article in the Harmonist that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta wrote about putana, and then there's 9 little points at the very, very end talking about the pseudo-guru. One thing he pointed out in this pastimes is that Kamsa, who sent Putana to Vrindavan, he represents aggressive empiricism, and he likes to suppress the truth before it has time to develop. They have an innate dislike for anything spiritual. So he sent Putana to destroy Krishna before he grew up. So this pseudo-guru is associated with like-minded people and those who uphold dictionary definitions of subjects that are transcendental to dictionaries. And he engages these personalities to put down Krishna consciousness at its earliest stage. So that's referring today our so-called academia, you know. Education is meant to show us that religion is outdated at best and just a waste of time. Like that. And they put a lot of money into it. There's a lot of money that goes into making sure people, and you know, the whole world of advertising and just everything that goes on out there, there's a reason behind it. A few years ago, I met a gentleman here in San Diego. I did his sister's shraddh, and he teaches here in San Diego the history of cinematography, like what's Hollywood and all that. So that's kind of an interesting subject. I said, oh, yeah, it's quite interesting. It's the history of all of that. And we were talking about different things, and he told me, you people don't understand, behind all of those movies is a lot of politics. There's a whole lot of politics about what the message they want to get out. And he said quite a few of the board members in Hollywood, the movie, whatever it's called, industry, are actually ex-military and politicians. And the message they want to get out to the American people, and our movies are exported all over the world. They are our PR program, how we control the world, how we influence the world through our movies, and it's very much orchestrated what's in those movies. What we want people to think is reality. So quite interesting stories, he told me. So it's all out there. They want to engage all these different aspects of society and making sure people aren't religious. They're fighting it. So this is your Kamsa and your Putana. And as soon as a transcendental child is born, they fall into the hands of Putana, the pseudo-teachers of religion. The attempted success of Putana over genuine spiritual teachers is aided by the efforts of organized religion, which is atheism in the garb of theism. That's Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's own words. So our organized religions, for the most part, you see that they're not interested in pure devotional service. Whether it's Christian or Hindu or Buddhist or this or that, they're not many people are interested in pure devotional service. They're interested in enjoying in this material world, like that. So organized religion is an attempt to force the people in general to follow certain religious principles without effecting any spiritual advancement in them, so is doomed to failure. Okay? They would like to improve materialism through their religion and so enlist the aid of the putanas. So in other words, our spiritual leaders, they are out there to help people improve their material life. God bless you. Like that. So, but Putana cannot be successful once real religion has actually appeared. In other words, Krishna appeared, Putana didn't have a chance. Okay? In fact, she is destroyed at the earliest point in its development. The would-be slayer is herself slain. This is the reward of the negative services that the Putanas unwittingly render to the cause of theism by strangling all hypocritical demonstrations against their own hypocrisy. So Krishna kind of put her out of the system. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta concludes by saying, the effective silencing of the whole race of pseudo-teachers of religion is the first clear indication of the appearance of the Absolute on the mundane plane. The bona fide teacher of the Absolute heralds the advent of Krishna by uncompromising campaign against the pseudo-teachers of religion. So that's the purpose of the Krishna consciousness movement, is to give the real message, and those who are opposing themselves as religious leaders and so on, that's why they're really upset with us. They're really upset. They probably even said if they knew what I was saying, they'd ask me to go home, right? Probably they'd ask me to go home. So he shows up and says, no illicit sex, no meaning, gambling, no intoxication, just basic religious principles and chant the holy name. But they tell me to get back on the boat and go home. We're interfering with the status quo. Unfortunately, the status quo is just staying in the material world comfortably. So it says that religion, the difference between religion and spirituality is, in religion, God is part of your life. In spiritual life, you're part of God's life. See the difference? In the materialistic religion, God's part of our life. He's there, we call upon Him, we ask Him for things, we're in trouble, it's 911. Generally, we're just praying for prosperity and good health and all these things, and nothing beyond that. Nothing really beyond that, just how to be happy in the material world. One prayer after the next after the next. I think I brought this up in a previous class once or twice, that when I perform these pujas, sometimes I ask people, I said, what's the best thing you can ask from God? Because that's why they're doing the puja. Right? What's the best thing you can ask? And some say money, some say a house, some say nice children. And none of them say devotional service. So I tell them, well, actually, the greatest blessing you can get is pure devotional service, spiritual blessings, because they last forever and they're eternal. But they never even cross their mind. Never even cross their mind. It's, never crossed their mind. So that's very, very unfortunate. And so spiritual life, we become part of Krishna's world. What does Krishna want? What is that? I'll end with this. I just read this recently. Keshav Swami, one of his books, he was saying that people have a list of what they want from God. But we should present a list and ask God what He wants from us. That should be the list. What can I do for you? As the devotee, whereas the materialist is, can you help me out with this, and this, and this, and this, and this, and this? See the difference? One is, give me, and one, what can I do for you? So when you go, he's saying, when you go before the Lord, when you go before the deities, instead of having a list of what Krishna could possibly do for me, my dear Lord, please inspire me within the heart. Give me the list for you. What would you like? What can I do for you? That's the difference. And it's a world of difference. So we can end here because of the time. Does anybody have any other questions or comments about pseudo-gurus and Śukrācārya and so on?
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Dharmasetu Prabhu. I had a comment about the pseudo-guru. You mentioned one of the qualities is that the pseudo-guru engages you beyond the capacity of you being able to handle a particular service. Are there any examples in modern times, maybe in Srila Prabhupada's times, when devotees were brought by a different, let's say, gurus, and they were engaged beyond their capacity? And also I was thinking that for example, if Srila Prabhupada would engage devotees, they would be, even if it's not beyond if it's beyond their capacity, they would still be able to have faith in their spiritual master and carry on. And like that, by the mercy of the spiritual master, they can still do what's intended.
Okay. One thing is, sometimes we're asked to do things which are apparently beyond our capacity or very, very difficult. But that shouldn't be ongoing. We have to make sacrifices. Certain, there may be a particular service we're asked to do. It's really not our nature, and maybe we're not even that good at it, but due to circumstance, it has to be done. Prabhu, can you run in the kitchen now and make the daily sweet? Okay. But it's not that every single day, we don't have a daily sweet. Can you run the kitchen? It's like, you got to go on Sankirtan. So there may be situations where the spiritual master asks a disciple to do something like that, but it shouldn't really be day in and day out. That's one thing. And when the spiritual authorities keep it going and going and going against a person's nature or ability to understand, that's when the problem starts. And then one feels manipulated. And unfortunately, that has happened in our movement. Anytime you get a group of people and someone in charge, that's going to happen. So it happens in our movement. It happens all over the world. Happens just over next door at the bar. The guy runs the bar. Sometimes he'll manipulate the employees because he wants something done. It's got to get done, and it's not very nice. Whatever. So that just happens. So one has to be careful about that. Be very, very careful about how we are engaging our dependents, the people who are looking up to us, and we have to be very responsible, because we're responsible for their spiritual growth. And if a person's doing something artificially, or whatever word you want to use, for a long period of time, things aren't going to work out very well. One has to be engaged, as Prabhupada said, according to their psychophysical makeup. And the guru is supposed to be expert at that. So if you're not sensitive to those things, devotees are going to have problems. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that seems like kind of like an explosive mentality, right? What you're describing. If it's
and it may not be that the spiritual authorities are nasty or mean, or they're just trying to get some things done, but they have to be sensitive to the big picture and long-range picture. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So they may be very, very sincere, and they're just trying to get things done, but you have to be very, very careful.
Mm-hmm. I had another question, if I can.
Would you want to let Ananda ask a question first, then come back to you? He's got a microphone.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you for the nice class. In Bhagavad Gita, it is said that in 10th chapter, Krishna says that out of all the intelligent people, I am Usrana, which is like Śukrācārya only. Yeah. So how we can relate, that like with the purport of Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada is saying that he is like a Smarta Brahmana. Right. And there in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is saying that out of intelligent people, I am like Śukrācārya. Right. So how we can correlate that with the purport of Srila Prabhupada?
That's a good point. We just had that discussion with Trivita. Was it in class? After class? Yeah, what it is Krishna's saying of intelligent people. In other words, Muni, he's got a very sharp, in fact, that was brought up in the purport. He's quite a sharp, he could understand what was going on. Very, very intelligent, very sharp, but that's not a devotional qualification or even a spiritual qualification. He was very, very sharp, could understand things and so on, but he couldn't understand, here's Vishnu and I should surrender to him. So how smart is he? But material smarts, he's a brilliant person. That's what it's saying. So as far as his material brilliance and intelligence, it's quite exceptional. And that's why it's an example in the 10th chapter of the Gita. But Krishna's not saying in that verse he's, a very intelligent devotee or something. No, he's not saying that. So he's quite, sometimes you meet people who are super, super intelligent. Like I mentioned once, I was sitting in the lobby once, and this Indian gentleman came down. It was for a wedding. He was waiting for his daughter to bring him to the wedding. And it turns out we started talking. He saw me dressed as the Pandit. And he was one of the 3 people who developed the cell phone technology many, many years ago. Brilliant person, obviously, to do all of that. But when I met him, he wasn't that old either, but what happened is everything shut down upstairs. He couldn't remember anything after about anything that happened 5-10 minutes before. And we had this whole conversation about religion. He was more or less an atheist and so on, and we were just having a great conversation, talking about that. I was making some points, getting a few shots in. And he said, you make a lot of sense. He said, but I have to tell you, I'm going to forget everything you said in about 10 minutes. Now here's the person who's so intelligent, developed the whole cell phone technology with 2 other scientists. And now, when he's an atheist, so what does that say? But also, it's gone to the point where, unfortunately, his brain stopped working, and now he just forgets everything. So material intelligence is not everything, It won't save us ultimately. So we can end here. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.